I think what the part I related with most then when you were talking is when you said about knowing there's something different, but not necessarily knowing what it is. And I think those signs, and I suppose we both grew up in the shadow of Section 28, didn't we? Where it wasn't allowed to be spoken about in schools. There was I didn't know any gay people at all when I was growing up. And my family was surprisingly very, I don't know why I say surprisingly, but they were a very masculine family. Like my dad was a rugby player. Most of my family were rugby players. There was this very set idea of what it was to be a man. And whilst I wouldn't say I knew I was gay when I was a little boy, I could tell that there was something different about me, like you said. And that's difficult. I think one of the things that's really hard about being in the LGBTQ community, as opposed to other kinds of diversity, is how isolating it is. Like if you're black and you're getting bullied at school for being black, you probably go home to your black parents who will explain it to you. And when you're gay, that's not the case. I think I felt like people started calling me gay from about 8. First it was you're a girl, then it was you're gay, and then it was the slurs, and you go home and who do you tell about that? Who do you talk to about it? And I had the sort of both sides of it where at home it was quite clear it wasn't okay for me to be gay as well. It is a really difficult thing, and I think coming out at so you were 16, 17 when you came out. I was a lot later than that. I was 21 when I came out, and it's the hardest thing I ever did. Like, it absolutely is. Like, I was in so much pain in the run up to it, because I think when you're gay and you don't want to be, how can you be expected to cope with that?
Yeah, especially when you, like you said, you don't have that space where it's okay for you to even have a conversation about it with any family, or like, did you have any friends that you could talk to about at that point, or did you ever see anybody who was gay, or?
Not really, or not in a positive way. Like, it was, like you said, queer as folk. I remember there was a show called Sugar Rush. Do you remember Sugar Rush?
Yes. Yeah.
About 2 lesbians in Brighton.
Yeah.
And like that was one of those things where it was kind of like, why do I like this so much? Like, why am I so invested in this? But in real life, no. And I think you forget with how sort of things are now and how far things have come. When I was in high school, being called gay was like the worst thing you could get called. That's definitely how I experienced it. It was the one thing you knew you didn't want to be. I was my dad as well. I mean, I'm not making it sound as if I came from this family of horrific homophobes, but it was more the sort of minor homophobic stuff that happened. My dad used to like tell me off for how I walked. Like, he'd say stuff about my wrists, like, you're walking with limp wrists. When I was like 9, and it's like, what does that even mean? Do you know what I mean? Well, I know what it means now, but like that sort of chronic self-awareness that I think goes hand in hand with being gay, of like, there's something about me that's not okay, and I can't show anyone that side of me. And so when I was 16, I did have a mini coming out, but I very quickly went back in, where I'd been to the Rocky Horror Show, and I dressed up, and it was a very, obviously, liberal environment I was in, and I felt, so I was wearing like high heels, a basque, pearls, all of that, and I felt so at ease, and so comfortable, and so confident, that when I came back from that, I'd had quite a lot to drink. I told my dad I was gay. He was drunk, I was drunk. I told him I was gay, and then I blacked out. And the next day, I went to where he worked, went into his office, and I was like terrified. Like, if you can imagine, like, hungover. I've just said this thing that I wasn't ready to say. Do you know what I mean? That I'd only said because of how drunk I was.
Yeah.
I was like, the cat's out of the bag, I've got to deal with this. And I went into my dad's office, and the first thing he said to me is what you said last night true? In quite a pointed tone. And I could see from his expressions, like the tone of his voice, he was like shaking a little bit. I could see the fear, I could see anger, I could see... he was like begging me to take it back, so I did. And it's just, I don't know, it's just such a difficult thing, isn't it? Like finding your way in it. And I think it's hard to, what I find difficult now is when I look back to that bit of my life, so say the main years I struggled were 16 to about 21, where all I really thought about was my sexuality.
Yeah.
It's like now, I'm like, what the hell was, do you know what I mean? What was I doing? Like, because I love being gay now, but it was horrendous.
But that's like your authority figure, isn't it? Your dad. And so, you know, when you're getting that kind of visual signals, it's not okay to be who you think you are. You're just going to revert back to, okay, no, I'm not that person. I'll just carry on being who I've been up till now. I'll bury it.
Yeah. And I think that's why, obviously, next week we're going to talk about gay shame more, but I think that's a lot of where that kind of shame comes from, because any positive praise I used to get when I was a child or when I was a teenager was a play-acted version of myself. Do you know what I mean? So it didn't mean anything. Do you know what I mean? It didn't mean anything because it wasn't who I really was. And I think it does, it does stay with you, like living your life so inauthentically for so long. And just that fear, like the constant fear of being found out as well. I know I really had that. As I got older, like you alluded to, like gay bars, like I started doing the same thing from about 18 onwards. I'd like, go to Canal Street or wherever, start experimenting with males. And
but you're doing that without you being out to anyone else, like friends or family.
No, completely in secret. Like I'd go on my own. Sometimes I'd go with like girlfriends. Not. I don't mean girlfriends as in partners. I mean like female friends.
Yeah.
And we'd all go to Canal Street, and I'd just disappear. Off into the night, wake up in a Novotel the next day with no memory of what's happened. But just this, I think I thought being gay was sordid. Like that's kind of how I saw it. That's what I'd learned. Like that's the image I had of what being gay meant. It's this bad thing that you're not supposed to do. It's really sleazy. It's really sordid. You're not supposed to. And then I sort of treated it like that as well, because I was sneaking off, going into toilets with people I didn't know, getting taken advantage of by people. It put me in a very vulnerable place. And it just increased that shame cycle, because I had a girlfriend as well, and she got cheated on a lot.
So you're living this double life, basically.
Yeah, not particularly successfully, but I was like a superhero.
Two different versions of Stephen.
And yeah, being closeted was really, really bizarre. And like the sort of mental gymnastics I used to have to do, like I convinced myself that because I could physically have sex with a woman, I mustn't be gay, because I wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
And I think the level of delusion and like denial was that maybe all people do this. Like maybe everyone's secretly thinking about men when they're having sex with women. But I don't think they are.
Maybe not everybody.